The doctor slipped me a secret note that read, "Don't go home. Run." That night, I discovered my own family was planning to have me committed to a nursing home to steal everything I had. But what they didn't know was that I had a secret that would see the slap of the elevator doors closing behind me sounded like a verdict, and I couldn't stop hearing Dr. Sterling's strained voice saying, "Family isn't always what it seems." I'm Martha Caldwell, and I'm 70 years old, which in practical terms means I've learned to notice tremors in people that have nothing to do with age. His hands shook, not because they were old, but because they were carrying something fragile, the truth. I pressed my palm against my purse, where the folded note lay hidden like a contraband heartbeat, and rode up to the condo I share with my son, Benjamin, his wife Eleanor, and my granddaughter, Olivia. We moved in together after Robert died 10 years of widowhood that taught me how long a house can echo. For 45 years, I've introduced Benjamin as my miracle, the boy we adopted at 2, the boy I loved so fiercely I would have carved pieces of myself to feed him. I did in ways no one applauded. Tuition paid with double shifts, holidays sacrificed to keep his soccer boots new. My body learning the choreography of small sacrifices until I could do it without thinking. The door was ajar. Benjamin rarely leaves doors ajar. The sound that drifted to meet me was the sound of voices trimmed to fit inside secrets. When I stepped in, all 3 of them tilted their faces toward me and smiled like a photograph. My daughter-in-law tucked a stack of papers behind her back with the artless grace of someone who truly believes you won't ask. My son said, "How was the appointment, Mom?" My granddaughter murmured, "That's great, Grandma," when I said my labs were perfect, though the words sat in her mouth like they didn't belong. The air between us went thin, so thin I could see right through their expressions and into the place where disappointment was sharpening itself. I cooked anyway because that's what my hands know. Pot roast that has soothed every argument I've ever lost, carrots cut on the diagonal like Robert liked. Eleanor set the table with the same mouth she uses to rearrange reality. Olivia scrolled and smirked and called me cute under her breath the way some people call a dog obedient. Benjamin ate exactly 3 bites, then stared at the clock as if salvation were scheduled for 8 p.m. I have always been a woman who chooses quiet over conflict, so I swallowed my questions with the gravy and told myself I would read the note after I did the dishes. Love for me has often been a sink full of plates at 10 at night, my back a little bent, my hope a little foolish. When I finally closed my bedroom door, I sat on the bed as though the mattress were a bench in a confessional. My fingers found the note. It was small, and I wanted it to be nothing, but it was a flare. It was a lifeline. It was a betrayal put in black ink by a man who has measured my blood for years and knows how fast it runs. "Mrs. Caldwell, your family was here yesterday. Eleanor asked me to certify you need special care. They asked about your inheritance and assets. Don't go home. Run." He had underlined run twice. I read it again, and then again the words rearranging the furniture of my life while I sat still. I thought of Robert's last breath in our living room, the way he pressed his ring into my hand and whispered, "Don't let them make you small." I thought of Benjamin at 6, asleep in my lap with chocolate on his mouth. Benjamin at 22 saying he'd pay me back after grad school. Benjamin last month suggesting a cozier place would suit me at my age. And then I thought of the papers Eleanor had hidden. I thought of Olivia's cold little smile. The edges of the world went sharp. At 2 in the morning, the walls learned to speak. I heard their voices from the kitchen low, but careless, confident the old woman's ears had retired. "The damned doctor wouldn't cooperate," Eleanor said, a clink of glass in her sentence. "I told him she's slipping. I told him she leaves the gas on." He said she was fine. Benjamin's voice, the one I taught to say, "Please," leaned into calculation. "We'll find another doctor." We'll do what we have to. Olivia's voice, my girl with my cheekbones, was a brittle ornament. I need the money now, Dad. I already booked the program. Benjamin scolded her gently, not the content, just the volume, and then mapped out the plan with the calm of a man ordering lumber. We'll switch her pills, hide her keys, move things, and say she did it. A month of that, and any doctor will sign. Eleanor's approval came like a door locking. And once she's inside, we handle the accounts. Grandmothers are supposed to be soft. I am soft. But somewhere under the softness is a spine Robert admired. I stood there in the dark, pressed against the wall, and listened to my love turn into evidence. They laughed. How do I explain that to you? They laughed like it was a prank, like it was clever, like the world would clap. And in that laugh, something in me hardened into glass. What they never learned, because they had never asked, was that Robert left more than a pension and a box of photographs. My prudent husband, who sold insurance by day and read investment books by night, left a constellation of accounts I kept quiet to keep us safe. Offshore. Quiet property deeds in towns with seagulls and languages I'd never master. $2.2 million worth of caution. Quiet doesn't mean weak. It means I know how to sit in a room and keep a secret breathing. It means I know how to act like a woman who buys her sweaters on sale because it costs me nothing and buys me everything. At 5, the sky was a bruise that hadn't decided if it would heal or deepen. I packed with a steadiness that surprised me. Documents, medications, that little black notebook in Robert's handwriting that has always felt like a second spine. Before I left, I turned my phone on and pressed record and walked the hall again, pausing outside their doors long enough to collect a few more sentences that sounded like the inside of a cage. She has nowhere to go, Benjamin said, and Eleanor added, no friends. We are all she has. It is astonishing how wrong villains can be about the woman washing their dishes. I left a note on the kitchen table that said, errands. Back later. A small sentence designed to buy me a day, a head start, a breath. In the taxi, I watched our building shrink in the rear-view mirror and let my hands tremble for exactly 1 block. Then I made them stop. At the bank, the teller called me ma'am in a way that was respect not pity, and I withdrew what I needed to breathe without asking anyone's permission. By noon, I was in a hotel with carpets thick enough to muffle footsteps and a window wide enough to see my life from a distance. I cried exactly once an old sound that belongs to mothers, and then I ordered tea and called a lawyer, whose bio promised he was the kind of man who could turn a plan into a wall. When Benjamin called at 2, I answered because I wanted his voice for the file. Mom, where are you? He tried to sound tender. He sounded cornered. Taking a day for myself, I said, and pressed the recorder icon again. You never do that, he said, and there was a pause, like a foot on the wrong step. Maybe I should have, I said, and hung up before he could diagnose me with the madness they needed. The world outside my window was every age, at once ruthless kind, distracted waking. I brewed tea in the little silver pot and whispered, Robert, I'm ready. I didn't sleep that first night in the hotel. I arranged papers like a general moving pieces on a map, and every time my courage wobbled, I pictured Eleanor's mouth forming the words, switch her pills, and Benjamin's careful voice calling me erratic. By dawn, I'd chosen a law firm with a reputation for turning bullies into exhibits. The senior partner, a measured man named Graham Montgomery, with a courtroom voice that could fold a lie in half, took my call within an hour. Come in, he said. Bring everything. We'll secure you before we confront them. His office smelled like leather and ink, and the kind of certainty you pay for. I laid out the note from Dr. Sterling, my recordings. My account summaries the list of Robert's quiet investments written in his blue pen. Graham listened without interrupting, which felt like someone handing me back oxygen. When the recordings played, he leaned forward so slightly I almost missed it, but his eyes hardened. "Mrs. Caldwell," he said, lowering the volume, "this is a conspiracy, elder abuse, attempted fraud, possible identity theft, and if they meddle with your medication, felony endangerment. We're going to build 3 walls, banking blocks, medical certification, and a narrative that shows exactly who's trying to drive whom insane." He pressed a button and summoned a paralegal with a neat braid. Jenna prioritized emergency protections flags on all accounts, notice to the condo manager, and a no-contact letter drafted for delivery if they escalate. "And bring in Cal." Cal turned out to be a former detective who now wore cardigans over a private investigator's instincts. He took notes like footprints. "We'll start with their debts," he said, "because fraud is a weed that grows where money is thirsty. We'll also capture any attempt to access your records. May I put a hold on your credit?" "Please do," I said, and felt something inside me start to stand up straighter. By afternoon, Cal was back with a face that said, "You were kinder than they deserved." "Your son lost his job 8 months ago," he said carefully. "Sports betting. The numbers aren't gentle. Eleanor has opened 3 store cards in your name and 1 major credit card. $43,000 in the last 6 months. Florida charges? A week at a Keys resort while they told you her mother was ill." He slid photos across the table, Eleanor in a sun hat, a drink sweating in her hand. I stared at the image until the ice looked like something that could drown. Graham's team moved like a choreography I hadn't known existed for women like me. A geriatric psychiatrist with shy eyes evaluated me the next morning and wrote cognitively intact. No evidence of dementia, delirium, or significant impairment. We made 3 copies. Cal installed a quiet camera on the door of my condo with the superintendent's permission, and a letter from Graham just in case Eleanor's talent for tidying up extended to my jewelry box. Bank managers called me ma'am again and placed a code on every account that only I could provide. At night, I sat by the hotel window and watched the skyline pretend it had always been safe. Benjamin's messages mutated as the protection set. First worry, then urgency, then irritation dressed as concern. "Mom, we're calling the police." "Mom, this is unlike you." "Mom, please come home. Eleanor made your favorite stew." After I didn't respond, the tone soured. "If you don't return, we will be forced to seek guardianship for your own safety." I forwarded that one to Graham without commentary. He replied within minutes. "Good. Let them file. We'll let the judge see your clean labs and their dirty plans." The clean and the dirty arrived together 3 days later. Cal's voice was flat when he called the way good men sound when they wish they were wrong. "They met a fixer last night named Paul Hayes. Document forger. Paid a retainer to create a neurocognitive decline file and a backdated letter from an out-of-state doctor. We didn't get audio, but we got stills." He texted a photo Benjamin's profile nauseatingly familiar over a table littered with coffee cups. Eleanor's hand on his sleeve, like a stain. My stomach nodded fear, yes, but also a slow astonishment at the audacity. It's not enough to steal. They wanted to rewrite time. Rage is a wildfire. Strategy is a controlled burn. Graham vetoed my first 2 ideas, a knock on their door with a camera crew, a letter to every neighbor I'd baked cookies for. "Not yet," he said. "We gather and we stage. We need an incontrovertible scene." It was Cal who found the stage Richardson and Associates Realty, a firm with marble floors and excellent acoustics. "They've been making inquiries about listing your condo," he told me. "If they show up there, we'll document an attempt to sell without authority." I said, "And if they don't?" He smiled gently. "They will. People who confuse your kindness for weakness always mistake momentum for inevitability." The night before our little play, I did something I hadn't done in years. I took myself out to dinner without apologizing for the table. The maitre d' called me Miss Caldwell with respect italicized around it. I ordered salmon and wine and a dessert I didn't split with anyone. In the restroom mirror, the woman looking back at me had the bones of the girl who left her small town with a suitcase, and the stubbornness to make a life. I thought of Benjamin asleep on my chest at 2 of teaching him to lace shoes of the day he called me Mom without testing the word first. Grief rose like a tide, and I let it wash over me. Love doesn't vanish because truth arrived. It just learns where to stand. Morning! I wore the emerald dress Sophia had coaxed out of my closet insecurities, the one that made me look like I remembered the forest inside me. At 10:45, I stepped into Richardson and Associates with my agent Rick, a man who loved square footage and sincerity in equal measure. He began to describe crown molding. I nodded and let the words settle me. At 11:02, the front door chimed, and in swept Benjamin and Eleanor and Olivia, dressed in their best versions of plausible. For a moment, ridiculous, reflexive, I felt the urge to adjust Benjamin's tie. Then I remembered he'd tried to knot a noose around my life and kept my hands at my sides. We stood on opposite ends of the foyer, like a family portrait someone had sliced in half. The receptionist looked between us, sensing heat. My heart thudded once, twice, then steadied. I smiled a small, precise smile and said, "Hello, family," loud enough for the marble to memorize it. Benjamin's face drained. Eleanor's slipped and slid, searching for the expression most likely to work on me. Olivia's eyes filled, then hardened a storm, deciding which direction to move. Behind me, the glass doors reflected us all. I saw what the room saw: a 70-year-old woman in a green dress that told the truth, and 3 people about to learn that wolves starve on the other side of certain doors. Somewhere in the building, a notary was already riding the elevator. Cal was across the street with a camera angled through a cafe window. Graham was on standby with language sharp enough to cut through any performance. I lifted my chin the way Robert liked and thought, let it begin. Eleanor was the first to recover her voice, and she aimed it like sugar-coated poison. Martha, we were just looking into some possibilities for you. We thought maybe a smaller place would suit you better. Less responsibility, more comfort. Her hands trembled slightly as she pressed her pearls flat against her collarbone, the way she always did when she lied. Benjamin, on the other hand, stood stiff as a board, his jaw tightening with each breath. "Mom," he said, "why are you here? You shouldn't be wandering around alone like this. We've been worried sick." His words were carefully measured, but the flicker of panic in his eyes betrayed him. "I shouldn't be here," I repeated softly, my voice carrying farther than I expected in the marble lobby. Funny. I thought I had the right to be wherever I pleased, especially in a place where my home is being discussed without my knowledge. The receptionist shifted uncomfortably, glancing at Rick, my agent, who looked suddenly very invested in the floor tiles. "Is there some sort of dispute?" he asked delicately. "No dispute," Benjamin interjected quickly. "Our mother has been very ill. We're handling her affairs for her. Power of attorney is in process." My laugh startled even me, sharp, humorless, cutting. "Power of attorney?" I asked. "What papers did you bring to prove that, Benjamin? Because as far as I know, the only power you've ever had over me was the power I willingly gave you when you were a frightened little boy, and I carried you into my arms." The entire office had gone silent. The hum of printers, the clicking of keyboards, all stopped, as though the building itself was listening. Eleanor's face flushed red. Olivia wouldn't meet my eyes. I reached into my bag and drew out the neatly folded papers Graham had insisted I keep on hand. "You see, I anticipated this charade," I said, unfolding the psychiatric evaluations, the notarized statements, the banking protections. "These are independent assessments from 3 licensed specialists who all certify that I am of sound mind, perfectly capable of handling my own affairs. Perhaps you'd like to read them aloud, Benjamin." He didn't move. Eleanor let out a brittle laugh, shaking her head. "Martha, really, dragging strangers into family matters. This is humiliating." Humiliating. My voice rose a tremor of fury beneath it. Do you know what humiliation is, Eleanor? It's raising a child with every ounce of your being, only to hear him whisper about switching your medications. It's hearing your granddaughter, the one you rock to sleep, say she's tired of pretending to love you. That is humiliation. This I held up the papers like weapons. This is justice. The sound of the lobby doors opening echoed like a cue. In walked two attorneys from Graham's firm, followed by a notary public with her briefcase and steel gaze. They approached me with quiet authority, greeting me by name. The blood drained from Benjamin's face. "This is absurd," he snapped, finally cracking. "She's confused. She doesn't know what she's doing." One of the lawyers turned to him. "Sir, unless you can provide documented proof of guardianship or legal authority, any attempt to act on behalf of Mrs. Caldwell is fraud. And you've just attempted it in front of multiple witnesses." He gestured toward the receptionist, the agents, the clients gathered in the periphery, their eyes wide with horror. Eleanor sputtered, We only wanted what was best." "What was best for whom?" I cut her off. "For me or for your next vacation to Florida?" Olivia flinched, her lip trembling. For a moment, she looked like a child again, caught lying about broken glass. But then she straightened, her jaw tightening, and I saw the spark of calculation in her eyes. She was already measuring how much of this wreckage she could distance herself from. The notary opened her briefcase, laying out forms, as though preparing for a signing. "We'll need written statements from everyone present to document this attempted fraud," she said crisply. "This will serve as official evidence." I turned to Benjamin, Eleanor, and Olivia, letting the silence hang heavy before I spoke. "Do you hear that evidence? Not your word against mine anymore. Not whispered lies in the kitchen. The world will see who you really are." Benjamin's composure cracked. His voice, usually so careful, came out raw and bitter. "You think you can destroy us? You're nothing but a lonely old woman who's always needed someone to take care of her. Without us, you're nothing." I stepped closer, my emerald dress catching the light, and looked him square in the eyes. "No, Benjamin. Without me, you're nothing. And tomorrow, when the courts and the cameras hear this story, everyone will know it too." Benjamin's outburst rang through the lobby, but it was my words that lingered in the marble air. He stood, frozen, chest-heaving, Eleanor clutching at his arm, like a drowning woman grasping for driftwood. Olivia hovered just behind them, pale as chalk, her eyes darting between me, the notary, and the gathering crowd of agents and clients. The mask of the perfect family had slipped, and in its place was something raw, desperate, ugly. The lawyer beside me cleared his throat. "Mrs. Caldwell will collect written statements from all present. This attempted fraudulent representation will be documented and filed immediately. Given the witnesses, it will be difficult for any judge to ignore." Benjamin's face hardened. "We won't let you get away with this." "You already let yourself get away with nothing," I answered, my voice steady. "You thought I'd go quietly, that I'd surrender the last of my dignity. But I am not the fragile old woman you painted me to be. I am the woman who raised you, and I am the woman who will bury your lies." Eleanor's voice trembled. "Martha, please. You're our family. We were just—" "Family." I cut her off, my fury searing now. Family doesn't forge medical records. Family doesn't plan to poison the mind of the one who gave them everything. Family doesn't laugh about hiding pills and stealing jewelry. What you are is a conspiracy with my last name." The receptionist shifted awkwardly, then spoke up, her young voice trembling. I heard what they said about power of attorney. I'll sign whatever statement you need." Her courage sparked murmurs among the onlookers. Others nodded, some whispering. How could they do that to their own mother? Benjamin's eyes darted, calculating, looking for escape. He grabbed Eleanor's hand and hissed, We're leaving. You won't get far, my lawyer replied evenly. The law is faster than you think. As they turned to go, Olivia lingered. For a moment, our eyes met. She looked younger than I'd ever seen her, stripped of bravado of coldness, just a frightened girl caught in a storm of her parents' making. Her lips parted as though she wanted to say something. But Benjamin barked her name, and she flinched, following them out into the blinding sunlight. The notary closed her case with a snap. Mrs. Caldwell, I'll file these affidavits today. Your son and his wife will be facing more than just family arguments now. Attempted fraud, identity theft, elder abuse, the list is growing. As I left the building, the city air felt lighter, as though the truth itself had weight, and I had finally set it down in public. For years, I'd carried silence like a burden. Now, silence belonged to them. Theirs was the silence of exposure, of schemes unraveling. Back at the hotel, I poured myself tea and let the steam curl around my face. I thought of Robert, my late husband, and the secret accounts he had left me like buried seeds. He had trusted me to find strength when I needed it most, and he had been right. The phone on the desk buzzed. A message from Graham. The FBI has confirmed Hayes, the forger, is already an informant. Your family's attempt to buy documents was recorded. Federal charges are inevitable. Rest tonight. Tomorrow we prepare for trial. I set the phone down, my hands trembling, not from fear, but from something fiercer, vindication. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like a woman on the verge of losing everything. I felt like a woman standing at the edge of reclaiming it all. That night, I barely slept. Not from fear those days had passed, but from the strange, restless energy of a woman finally stepping into a war she never chose, but could no longer avoid. I lay in the soft sheets of the hotel bed, staring at the ceiling, hearing their voices in my head, Eleanor mocking Benjamin cold, Olivia cruel in her indifference. I thought of the laughter in the kitchen that night, when they joked about hiding my medication, when my existence became nothing more than an obstacle to their comfort. That laughter had haunted me for weeks. Now, though, it was becoming fuel. At dawn, I stood at the window watching the city stir awake. Buses sighed at corners, horns blared, and joggers passed below with headphones and bottled water. For them, it was an ordinary day. For me, it was the day I stopped being invisible. I dressed in the emerald dress I'd bought days before, the one that made me feel alive again, powerful. I pinned my hair with the silver clip Robert had once given me on our anniversary, a reminder that love had existed in my life, once true love, not the twisted imitation Benjamin and Eleanor offered. At 9 sharp, I walked into Graham Montgomery's law office. His entire team was waiting, folders stacked, high screens glowing with documents and transcripts. Mrs. Caldwell Graham greeted standing, "It's time." He laid out the strategy. Federal investigators were moving quickly: fraud, conspiracy, attempted forgery. My recordings and the real estate office incident would be crucial. Olivia's potential testimony, if secured, could be the final nail. They'll fight, Graham warned. They'll smear you, claim you're paranoid, senile, vindictive. But we have proof. And soon, we'll have more than proof, we'll have them cornered. I nodded, calm, though my pulse throbbed like a drum. Let them try, I said quietly. I have lived too many years silenced. Their voices don't scare me anymore. That afternoon, I returned to the hotel and turned on my live stream. The little red light blinked, and thousands tuned in within minutes. I looked straight into the lens, my voice steady. My name is Martha Caldwell. I am 70 years old, and I have something to say about family, the kind that kisses your cheek while planning your funeral. I told them everything. The secret note from Dr. Sterling, the whispers in the night, the plan to drive me insane. I played the recording, Benjamin's voice spilling across the internet. We make her really lose her mind. Switch her medications. Hide her things. The comments poured in faster than I could read monster children. Stay strong, Martha. My grandmother went through the same thing. Some cried out for justice, others for blood. But one theme echoed again and again. You are not alone. And for the first time in years, I believed it. When the stream ended, I sat in the sudden quiet heart, pounding, but lighter somehow. The truth was out. No matter what Benjamin and Eleanor said now, the world had seen their masks slip. The next morning, a knock came at my sweet door. When I opened it, Olivia stood there, eyes swollen, hands, clenched shoulders, trembling. Grandma? She whispered, please. Can we talk? I let her in, though every instinct told me to slam the door shut. Olivia stepped into the suite like a child sneaking into forbidden territory, her eyes darting around as though expecting to find hidden cameras or listening devices. She looked smaller than I remembered, stripped of her practiced indifference. Her hair was unkempt, her jacket wrinkled, and when she sat on the edge of the chair opposite me, her hands shook so hard I could hear her bracelets clinking. Grandma! She began, her voice raw. I can't keep lying anymore. I can't keep pretending. Tears welled in her eyes, spilling down her cheeks, as though they had been waiting for years. I crossed my arms, my back stiff against the sofa. Pretending about what, Olivia? About loving me? About not knowing what your parents were planning? Or about standing silent while they plotted to destroy me? Her face crumpled. I knew more than I should have. I heard everything. I even agreed sometimes. I thought it was just talk, that nothing would actually happen. But when you left, when you disappeared, it all got worse. They blamed me for letting you slip away. Dad said if things go wrong, they'll pin it on me. I studied her face. For weeks, she had been cold, complicit, even cruel. And yet here she was, trembling like a child who finally realized the fire she helped light had grown out of control. And now you want me to save you? I said softly. Her lip trembled, but she nodded. I have recordings, she whispered, of their fights since you left. Messages, screenshots, proof they were planning to forge papers. I can give them to your lawyer. I'll testify if I have to. But Grandma, please, I don't want to end up like them. I don't want my baby to grow up thinking betrayal is love. The words hit me like a fist. Your baby. Her hands flew to her stomach as though she hadn't meant to reveal it. I'm 3 months pregnant, she admitted. Mom and Dad don't know who the father is. They think it's a boy from school. But it's not. He's married. He won't leave his wife. He doesn't want anything to do with the child. The room went quiet, the hum of the city outside pressing against the windows. For a long moment, I didn't breathe. This girl, my granddaughter, had been part of the plot that nearly destroyed me. And now she was carrying life inside her while drowning in her own lies. Olivia, I said, finally, my voice low, if you want forgiveness, it won't come with words. It will come with truth. Every piece of evidence, every secret, every betrayal you know of, you'll hand it over. And then, maybe we can start again. She nodded, desperately wiping her tears. I'll give you everything. Just don't give up on me, Grandma. Please, I'm not them. I wanted to believe her. God help me, I did. But scars ran deep, and forgiveness was not a gift I could hand out so easily anymore. I let her in, though every instinct told me to slam the door shut. Olivia stepped into the suite like a child sneaking into forbidden territory, her eyes darting around as though expecting to find hidden cameras or listening devices. She looked smaller than I remembered, stripped of her practiced indifference. Her hair was unkempt, her jacket wrinkled, And when she sat on the edge of the chair opposite me, her hands shook so hard I could hear her bracelets clinking. "Grandma," she began, her voice raw, "I can't keep lying anymore. I can't keep pretending." Tears welled in her eyes, spilling down her cheeks, as though they had been waiting for years. I crossed my arms, my back stiff against the sofa. Pretending about what, Olivia? About loving me, about not knowing what your parents were planning, or about standing silent while they plotted to destroy me? Her face crumpled. I knew more than I should have. I heard everything. I even agreed sometimes. I thought it was just talk, that nothing would actually happen. But when you left, when you disappeared, it all got worse. They blamed me for letting you slip away. Dad said if things go wrong, they'll pin it on me. I studied her face. For weeks, she had been cold, complicit, even cruel. And yet here she was, trembling, like a child who finally realized the fire she helped light had grown out of control. "And now you want me to save you?" I said softly. Her lip trembled, but she nodded. "I have recordings," she whispered, "of their fights since you left. Messages, screenshots, proof they were planning to forge papers. I can give them to your lawyer. I'll testify if I have to. But Grandma, please, I don't want to end up like them. I don't want my baby to grow up thinking betrayal is love." The words hit me like a fist. Your baby. Her hands flew to her stomach as though she hadn't meant to reveal it. "I'm 3 months pregnant," she admitted. "Mom and Dad don't know who the father is. They think it's a boy from school, but it's not. He's married. He won't leave his wife. He doesn't want anything to do with the child." The room went quiet, the hum of the city outside pressing against the windows. For a long moment, I didn't breathe. This girl, my granddaughter, had been part of the plot that nearly destroyed me. And now she was carrying life inside her while drowning in her own lies. "Olivia," I said finally, my voice low, "if you want forgiveness, it won't come with words. It will come with truth. Every piece of evidence, every secret, every betrayal you know of, you'll hand it over. And then, maybe we can start again." She nodded desperately, wiping her tears. "I'll give you everything. Just don't give up on me, Grandma. Please, I'm not them." I wanted to believe her. God help me, I did. But scars ran deep, and forgiveness was not a gift I could hand out so easily anymore. Type continue to receive the next part. "You said continue," ChatGPT said. Olivia slid her phone across the table toward me, the screen glowing with folder after folder of recordings. I hesitated before picking it up, my fingers trembling. The first file opened to Eleanor's voice, sharp and venomous. "If Martha thinks she can outlive us, we'll show her she can't. I'll call Hayes again about the paperwork." Then Benjamin's low growl followed. "She won't even know what's real by the time we're finished. Switch her pills, hide her purse, let her think she's losing her mind." The bile rose in my throat. I wanted to shut it off, but Olivia pressed my hand. "Keep listening," she whispered. Another recording played this time, an argument between my son and granddaughter. "Dad, this is too much. What if she really gets hurt?" Olivia's younger voice pleaded. Benjamin snapped back. "You want college, don't you? You want that apartment? Then keep your mouth shut and let us handle her." I stopped the recording and pushed the phone away, my vision blurring. "So that's it," I said, my voice trembling. "You all put a price tag on my life, my house, my savings, my mind worth more to you ruined than alive." Olivia's tears spilled again, and for the first time, I saw something different in her. Not calculation, not cruelty, just a girl broken by the weight of choices she was too young to carry. "I was wrong, Grandma," she whispered. I was so wrong. But I don't want my child to grow up learning betrayal is normal. I want to break the cycle. Please help me do that. I leaned back, staring at her torn between rage and pity. My heart screamed that she had been part of my destruction, but another part, buried deep, yet still alive, saw her desperation as a chance. Maybe, just maybe, she could be saved from becoming her parents. You'll testify, I said, finally, my tone iron. You'll stand in front of the court and tell the truth, no matter how ugly. You'll help me bury their lies. And then maybe I'll consider helping you find your way back. Olivia nodded so quickly her hair flew around her face. Yes, whatever it takes, I'll do it. I exhaled, feeling the storm inside me settle just slightly. Then we begin tomorrow. No more secrets, no more silence. If you want redemption, Olivia, this is your last chance. Her eyes met mine, filled with both fear and a fragile flicker of hope. Thank you, Grandma. But inside, I whispered to myself, not yet. Not thank you. Not until I see if you mean it. The morning of the first pretrial hearing arrived, cloaked in gray clouds, as though the sky itself knew storms were about to break. Olivia and I rode together in the back of Graham's car, silence thick between us. She clutched a small folder to her chest, the same one she'd filled with screenshots, recordings, and text chains from her parents. I watched her reflection in the tinted window, pale, trembling, but with a new kind of steel hiding beneath the fear. When we entered the courthouse, flashes from cameras nearly blinded me. My live stream had made me a symbol overnight. Reporters shouted questions. Mrs. Caldwell, do you regret exposing your family online? Martha, do you think your son deserves prison? I kept walking, my arm looped through Olivia's head, held high. For once, I didn't feel like prey. Inside the courtroom, Benjamin and Eleanor sat at the defense table. My son looked gaunt, dark circles, carving deep shadows under his eyes. Eleanor's once perfect hair hung limp, her lipstick smudged at the corner of her mouth. She stared at me with a hatred so sharp, I almost felt it cut through the air. Then Olivia's name was called. My granddaughter rose, legs trembling but back straight, and walked to the witness stand. She swore her oath with a shaky voice but clear eyes. And then for the first time she betrayed her parents in the one way they hadn't expected, by telling the truth. She recounted the night I overheard them, the whispered plans to switch my medication, the forger, the fake will. She confessed her own silence, her fear, her complicity. And when the prosecutor asked why she was testifying now, Olivia's voice cracked, but her words rang clear, because my grandmother gave me life twice. Once, when she raised me, and again, when she refused to break, even when all of us tried to. I won't let her fight alone anymore. I pressed a hand to my mouth as tears welled in my eyes. For weeks, I had hardened myself against her, convinced she was lost to greed. But in that moment, I saw something I hadn't dared hope for: redemption. Benjamin slammed his fist on the defense table, his face twisted with fury. Eleanor hissed something into his ear, but his eyes never left me. They were the same eyes I had soothed as a toddler, the same eyes I had adored for decades. Now they held nothing but venom. I realized then that this trial wasn't only about money or fraud. It was about the soul of my family, and about whether betrayal would have the final word. The courtroom felt like a pressure cooker ready to explode. After Olivia stepped down, she sat beside me, her hand trembling in mine. I squeezed it both to steady her and myself. Across the room, Benjamin leaned close to Eleanor, whispering furiously, their faces, masks of panic, poorly hidden beneath forced composure. The prosecutor rose again, this time holding the stack of recordings my investigator had unearthed. One by one they played. My son's voice dripped with cold calculation. She has nowhere to go. She has no money. We're all she has. It's pathetic." Eleanor's laugh followed bitter and cruel. "Sometimes I feel sorry for her, but then I remember she chose this life. And now she'll pay for it." Every juror's face twisted with disgust. I could feel the weight of their revulsion pressing down on Benjamin and Eleanor, crushing the last fragments of their polished facade. Then came the forger's testimony. Paul Hayes, shackled, but smirking, admitted everything under oath. "Yes, Benjamin Caldwell paid me 50 grand to create false medical records and a forged will. I wasn't going to finish it, though the feds caught me first." He leaned forward, his eyes glinting with satisfaction. "But trust me, your son wasn't just dabbling. He was desperate. Real desperate." The gasp that rippled through the courtroom was almost physical. Eleanor buried her face in her hands. Benjamin sat frozen, jaw-tight eyes like shards of broken glass. When it was finally my turn to take the stand, my knees trembled, but my voice did not. I looked at the jury, then at the judge, and lastly at my son, the boy I had cradled, fed, clothed, and prayed for. For 45 years, I began softly. I believed love was enough. I believed sacrifice would be returned with gratitude. I worked nights, cleaned houses, stitched clothes with bleeding fingers so my son could have a future. And what did he give me in return? My voice rose cracking like lightning. Betrayal. Plots to erase my sanity. Schemes to bury me alive in a nursing home and steal everything my husband and I built. My throat tightened, but I forced myself to continue. Family is supposed to protect you. But mine chose greed over love. They laughed while planning to destroy me. And yet I stand here because truth has a way of surviving lies. I may be 70 years old, but I am not invisible, and I am not weak. The silence that followed was absolute, broken only by the faint scribble of a juror's pen. When I stepped down, Benjamin's eyes burned holes into me. For the first time, I wasn't afraid of his anger. I pitied it. Because I had already won something, he could never steal back my dignity. The jury filed back into the courtroom after only 2 hours of deliberation. Their expressions were solemn, but I could already sense the weight of their decision. My hands trembled in my lap, but Olivia's small palm pressed into mine, steadying me. Across the aisle, Benjamin sat stiff and pale. Eleanor's mascara streaked across her cheeks. They looked nothing like the family I once knew, only strangers bound together by greed. The foreman stood, clearing his throat. "On the charge of conspiracy to commit fraud, we find the defendants guilty." A collective murmur rose in the courtroom. My chest tightened, tears spilling silently down my face. "On the charge of elder abuse, guilty?" Eleanor whimpered, slumping against the defense table. Benjamin clenched his jaw, but I saw his facade cracking with every word. "On the charge of attempted forgery of legal documents, guilty." It was over. Years of sacrifice, months of betrayal, and weeks of hell, all culminating in that single word. Guilty. The judge's voice cut through the air, firm and unyielding. "Benjamin Caldwell, you are hereby sentenced to 12 years in state prison. Eleanor Caldwell, you are sentenced to 10 years. Both sentences without possibility of parole before half the term is served." My breath caught. It wasn't joy I felt. It wasn't even vindication. It was grief for the son I once believed loved me. Grief for the daughter-in-law I treated as my own grief, for the family that had been rotting from the inside all along. But beneath the grief was something else. Something sharper, release. As the bailiffs led them away in handcuffs, Benjamin turned once, his eyes meeting mine. There was no apology, no shame, only rage. But his fury no longer frightened me. It only reminded me how far I had come. Outside, the courthouse steps were flooded with cameras and strangers. They wanted a statement. I looked at the flashing bulbs and microphones, and for the first time, I spoke not just for myself, but for every forgotten elder who had been silenced by betrayal. My name is Martha Caldwell, I said clearly. I am 70 years old, and today I proved that love does not mean allowing yourself to be destroyed. I proved that betrayal can be faced with truth and that dignity has no expiration date. If you are listening and you feel invisible, remember this: you are stronger than you think, and you are never too old to begin again. The crowd erupted in applause, but I wasn't speaking for them. I was speaking for me. Months later, I sat in the garden of my new home, smaller but filled with light. Olivia sat beside me, her belly beginning to show determination etched across her young face. She was studying law, now inspired by everything she had witnessed, determined to fight for those who could not fight for themselves. "Grandma," she said softly, "do you ever regret it?" Adopting Dad. I gazed at the roses swaying in the breeze, the sunlight spilling across my lap. "No," I said at last. "I don't regret love, but I regret ignoring the truth when it was staring at me. Love should never be blind. It should be clear, honest, and mutual. That's the lesson I carry now." She leaned her head on my shoulder, and for the first time in years, I felt a strange peace. Betrayal had tried to break me, but in surviving it, I had found a new purpose, a new strength, and a new family in the granddaughter who had chosen truth over lies. And in that quiet garden, I finally understood endings can be beginnings too. If this story touched your heart, please like this video. Share it with someone who needs courage. Subscribe for more true stories and tell me in the comments, what does family mean to you?